composite slabs are things the entry point. And I think note that this is, since this is affordable housing, the South Carolina Housing Finance Agency has design requirements that we have to meet. One of those is the amount of brick that we have on the buildings. They require a minimum of 30% brick on every elevation that we show. So we're achieving that by basically using this consistent brick base on all the buildings. And then I think the next couple of slides are just the exterior elevations. Speak specifically about any of those. Here, I'll turn it over to questions and comments.
Thank you. I had one question. I didn't see an existing conditions plan. What is the existing topography, like elevation wise, on the site roughly? Any idea?
Marion Sutherland can we forward? Let's back to the site plan. Some higher areas around 20.
Okay.
And then slopes a small portion towards River Road. And kind of this portion goes towards River Road, got a few ditches throughout. This is a jurisdictional wetland that's going to remain untouched. And then this is a non-jurisdictional wetland that will also remain untouched. So it kind of goes a little bit this way.
Okay. And then are you in a FEMA flood zone?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Have y'all talked about your drainage with city stormwater yet?
What was your question?
I was just wondering if they talked to city stormwater yet with their pond sizes. If they said that they meet the.
We are working on modeling our ponds, but so we're gonna have a combination of ponds, underground detention, bioretention areas. And luckily only a small portion of our site goes to a special protection area.
Go ahead.
I have one more. Can you speak a little bit more on the differences between the vegetated dry pond and the bioretention areas?
Yes, so the larger ponds are going to be our main areas of detention for the site for meeting those stormwater requirements. And then we have some smaller areas for quality where we couldn't fit a true pond. We wanted to up where we're going to have a larger bioretention area, but surprisingly, we also have really good infiltration on this site. So that's helping us get better use on the bioretention areas.
I have a couple of questions about those two. Are you finished, David? Okay. So for the vegetated dry pond, what is that? Is that just sod, or like what is the proposed vegetation?
It would just be sod, pure seed sod, and then vegetated around the edges, but nothing specific that makes it anything different than a normal dry pond.
Okay, and then are all of the areas that are shown in that light green color just grass?
Yes.
Okay, and then do we know, are those seeded or sodded or not there yet?
Not there yet.
Okay.
I would defer to my landscape architect, but whatever helps us, you know, we want to make sure it looks right, but we have to keep in mind that this is an affordable project.
And then I had a question about the fence. I was just where it's pointing, this 6-foot aluminum fence there. What are the, does it run the whole property? Is it enclosing? Is it just along that side? Do y'all know the limits of that fence?
So we've had some discussion on the fence. For the PUD, it has to be within this 25-foot buffer, and it's on the property side of the 25-foot buffer that we have up against Finn McCall. It does not have to run. It can, we've talked a lot about security because obviously this is private property that we're up against, but it is likely going to stop here at the wetland because for the PUD, it doesn't have to go all the way through, but it will continue and wrap down to this project and then also what's happening here.
And then would it just be like open at the ends, I guess? Just
At that end, yes.
Okay.
At this end, we'll have to see where other fence terminates from the two other projects.
Okay.
How that ties in.
2 more questions. The pathway where y'all have just like the little cul-de-sac at the end, is that gonna extend eventually, or is it just?
It is not our plan to extend because we had to weave that pathway, which is great, it's required by the PUD. we're trying to avoid tree impacts.
Mhm.
Right now, it's cutting through the fence. But we're trying to avoid tree impacts, and then that's a jurisdictional wetlands, we're not disturbing it. But right now, it is planned to sort of terminate there, maybe a bench situation. But it's not planned to connect all the way around.
And we don't know what that circle is really gonna be, but there might be something there.
Some sort of,
And just like the way it's drawn, it looks like it creates like something intentional, so I was curious with that.
my thought was maybe you make some sort, the wetland here, it's all very pretty. And we wanna leave it pretty untouched, but maybe put like a bench or something.
And one other question, the gray areas, what are those? Like all of this, I saw on one thing, it's like future building site or something, what is that?
So that's additional area that's also owned by the city of Charleston that is, I would say, planned to be affordable housing, a separate project. The product is still being worked out between a couple of developers, the city, what that is intended to be. But it is going to be additional affordable housing. The subdivision line is pretty funky based on what we thought was gonna happen. There was a clock, there was a timeline, there was a plan, and that it might have changed.
Any other questions?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Just a few questions. Would you go to A02 for a moment, David? Just so that we understand architecturally, and it doesn't matter. In the north, in the exterior corridor, there is a line. If you look at the drawing on the right-hand side, for instance, and go all the way up to, there you go, and just about where you put your finger, there is a line. What does that line represent?
That is the slab of that corridor sloping, it slopes down to meet the sidewalk out here. And so that's just the point where it transitions to a flat slab in here.
But on the upper levels, it shows as well.
On the upper levels, it's the end of that corridor. So you see down, this becomes an open area on those floors.
I'm sorry, it becomes
An open area.
an open area on the floor.
That's right, that becomes the end of that since that would create a longer than a 20-foot dead end. That's the stair here.
Dealing with moisture in those areas, I'm just curious what y'all's thoughts were as far as ventilating. The roof comes all the way over, I'm assuming, and you have a 3-story open space.
That's right. The breezeway is fairly open. This corridor is open all the way across. It's open on both ends here and at the stairs. And so there's nothing that prohibits the movement of air through that space. And we have several projects where we've done, conditions like this. Pull the roof back here to help eliminate a lot of rain and things that might get into that breezeway.
Am I reading the elevations correctly that in fact you're putting a screening on in the front of those open airways?
Only at the stairwells, if you see,
Yeah.
there is a screen, there's a little roof overhang on the ground floor.
Okay.
As you enter, and then the slats are above that.
And at the end, there's just the pseudo window appearance of,
That's
okay.
correct.
Let me ask you also, what is the inspiration behind the asymmetrical roof? I heard what you were saying. I'm looking contextually, having been out to the site and looking at everything around there. Just curiosity, even as far as, and something just to talk about for a moment, the asymmetrical roof, the different size of the siding, the vertical. I heard it, but I'm not sure I'm following why it's being pursued.
Yeah, so with the length of the building, we were looking for ways to break up this elevation, and we decided to do that with the roof line. And rather than just doing a symmetrical gable, because of the spacing of the apartments, we started looking at, as we set gables, how do we set them in a way that sets up some kind of rhythm. And because of the way the plan's laid out, we decided that doing a varied roof pitch would allow us to kind of hit those points that hit at random places. So it really became a strategy of breaking up the roof line, but also creating some interest in that roof line. And our thought was, with the wooded site, playing off this idea of tree canopy and something that's a little more organic than just a rigid rhythm of gable roofs along that elevation. And so that also started to tie into doing these vertical trim boards and breaking up the siding, the lap siding, 6 inches and 8-inch lap siding, to create a little texture, kind of playing on this idea. One of these vertical lines mimicking the tree trunks, and then the lap siding creating the texture of foliage of a tree. So that's kind of what inspired all that. And we just thought it was an interesting way, a playful way to break up that elevation.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
One, I think you mentioned that the path is gonna cut through the fence. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
So right now, we just have a narrow break in the fence for pedestrians to kind of walk through. Again, we want to keep the site as secure as possible, but we do have the path winding within the buffer that's required from the PUD document, and kind of just weaving through there, so it's not just one straight path.
What is the requirement? Is it that it has to be in the buffer, or that there has to be a walking path? Like what, how?
There has to be a multi-use walking path, and for us, there wasn't really much site area left for it to kind of meander and be real natural. Otherwise, you're walking through the middle of the buildings.
I do have an image of the section.
Oh, the inside.
Oh, so while he's getting that pulled up, can you speak to the decision to put the fence on the inside of the walking path versus on the outside?
Per this PUD buffer requirement, it's supposed to be right up against the property line.
Okay.
So that drove that.
What was that question about? What was against the property line?
Why the fence was up against the property line as opposed to the path being on the inside of the fence. And it was because of the fence location being dictated by the PUD.
I thought,
So it's showing on what maybe I'm not reading this right, but it's showing here the arrow that the fence is inset from the property line.
right.
It's on the buffer
pathway
line.
in the building.
So this is the property line between us and Fenwick Hall.
Okay.
So if Fenwick Hall, 25 feet. Fence. Sorry, I'm saying property line, buffer line.
Buffer,
It is
okay, yeah,
on
that
the
makes
far
sense,
edge,
yeah.
sorry, on the far edge of the backside of the buffer.
And that's where the,
And that's where it
has to be per the PUD.
For the PUD, yes,
But the
sorry, I was saying
path-
property line and wrong one.
All good.
But the pathway location isn't dictated by the PUD.
Not dictated by the PUD, just that we have to have it, and so that was the more natural. As opposed to weaving the buildings, which we can have from that too, but that was the more natural area.
Does it have to be a certain length or anything by the PUD?
The length is not dictated, but I just get with the,
You just have to have one somewhere on the
Yes.
site plan.
Any other questions?
And I missed the little cul-de-sac. I mean, I know Aaron asked the question. What is that, just kind of a bookmark at this point in time? Is it?
exactly, it is just somewhere for that path to sort of terminate, loop back, because to continue, we would be getting into this disturbance of the wetlands and some green trees.
Okay.
Is the path material determined yet? Is it concrete?
Plantation mix, and that would match what's across the street.
So the area that is gray is not wetlands then, it's just undeveloped property.
Not there.
Future.
It is city-owned property to be developed into another affordable product.
I'm sorry, where the little cul-de-sac is, is that same thing, which you're, go to the next slide. I'm sorry, I was looking for the there, right there. So the gray area, right there,
This or this?
up top.
Surrounding the cul-de-sac.
That is undeveloped and this is a non-jurisdictional wetland in here.
So if you could go back one page, David, to the tree, no, other way. There. So if you zoom in there, you can see the lines where the wetlands are and what's available to be developed for amenity. That would be words in your mouth, but what I would say amenity areas or, you know.
So how do you get to that?
That's a non-jurisdictional wetland.
Correct.
You're not going that way.
Okay,
You're going just to the path.
gotcha,
And then she would say maybe like bench or something.
gotcha, okay. So you started the other end, come back.
Yeah.
I
And
gotcha.
then there's just
Understood.
2 breaks in the fence for the path. And then it ends before that one, or there's another break.
There's 2 breaks.
Thank
I guess 3.
3 breaks, 3.
But that's all wetlands here.
So there's no way to get
It's- So this wetland comes basically through this tree line and there's upland between.
There is.
So, I mean, I don't know if we're getting into comments, I guess. we
Yeah.
can wait, But
It's
I mean, the path could, well. Of, you know, dollars. The path, you know, we're just trying to navigate all these trees, but yes, it can continue. Depending on how this works out. It would just terminate. Potentially further down.
we can discuss it more in comments.
Say not fully designed.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Is there anyone here from the public that would like to speak on this application? With none, we will move on to city staff recommendations.
Thank you. That observations first, height, scale and mass. The buildings on one this location. The applicants did not provide a streetscape exhibit per the conceptual review checklist, but this proposed 3-story height. Of this project is the same as the new apartments across the street of DRB. On the opposite side of this project is historic Fenwick Hall, which is a good distance away, probably around 1,100 feet away from where the proposed building will be. With a forest basically between the proposed building and Fenwick Hall. Staff supports the design direction of the buildings. We find the asymmetrical gables to be interesting and different. It's a unique modern look. We also like the use of the materials, the brick base with the siding is nice. The amount of pervious parking is a plus, as well as the planted dry detention pond and the bio retention areas. Staff comment number 1, staff suggests that the area of the facade where the composite cladding is at the stairwells be recessed about 1 foot as if a height. That's referring to this area right here. This is where the stairwells are. We just thought to help break up the mass a little bit. These were recessed in a small amount, that'd be helpful. Staff comment number 2, building C south elevation. So I was referring to this area and the bend of the building. I couldn't tell if these were open. I believe they are because I think see the door behind there in the hallway, it's on the other side of the hallway. So I just had a question if they were open or covered. And I was a staff recommendation to consider Bermuda shutters or possibly shed roof. Such a small shed roof like this, possibly between each floor. Just a suggestion. Staff comment number 3, the applicants have the AC condensers all around each building, which staff finds problematic aesthetically. Also, DRB typically asks for fencing plus shrubs to screen all the AC units and not just shrubs only. And typically, we prefer to see the AC units corralled at the ends of the buildings. Of course, except where there's ground floor patios. Study finding a way to group the units or study placing these units on the roof. Staff comment number 4, there's a 6-foot height fencing proposed along the property line to toward the side of his historic Finland Hall. Currently, the fence is proposed set back from the property line 25 feet. Per the PUD, with the walking path going through the fence and on the Finland Hall side of the fence. Staff feels the fence should be an indicator to stay off the property of Finland Hall. We would like to see the proposed fence move to the property line and be continuous from one end to the other, with the path staying where it is, but now on the same side as the fence of the building. And I do want to comment on, I've talked to Eric Schultz and Christopher Morgan in our department, and they were in agreement that this fence could be moved. This is some language that talks about, this is language from the PUD that talks about some of these elements could be moved, but it would require permission from the Fenwick Hall owner. And Eric Schultz thought that should probably also comment on this, but it would be the applicant's responsibility if the board feels also that the fence should be moved to the property line. Otherwise, staff would recommend getting rid of the path because we don't feel that it should be on the outside of the fence towards what I call for security purposes. Staff comment number 5, staff could be okay with this type of 6-foot ornamental fence that the applicants were proposing, but we would like them to study a couple other options. This wire type fence is something I've seen in the past that's I find it very attractive because it practically disappears out in the landscape. But if they could maybe price this one out and come up with one other option as well. Staff comment number 6, the plant variety and types are looking good. Lean towards more natives, less ornamentals, but variety is good. In some areas, staff recommends more loose groupings and less straight rows of planting. Staff comment number 7, provide a next review more detailed seed plant mix information on the various planted areas of the detention ponds. I didn't realize that the dry detention was only sod grass, and we would recommend more of a variety of seeds that have pollinators and something in there as well, rather than just sod grass. Comment number 7, provided the next review. Oh, I'm sorry, I said that. Number 8, staff recommends adding to the plant list a good number of evergreens such as red cedars or palmettos, etc., to be randomly added to the existing buffer along riverbed. A couple cypress trees would be a plus as well. I am adding number 9. I touched on it already, but I'm going to add a staff comment number 9. Applicant it's responsibility to contact the owner and SHPO to get approval for the change from the wall to the fence as well as the new location. I did forget to comment on one thing about the PUD. So we had a meeting with TRC last month, and as a whole group, along with the applicants, the PUD does call for a 6-foot masonry wall right here, but it was decided upon among the whole group that a fence would be acceptable to a wall rather than a wall, partly to do, expense. But that's another one of those things that the owner would need to get approval for from the owner of Fenwick as well as SHPO. So along with that, I would request that the fence be moved to the property line. So those two items would need to be approved by the Fenwick owner, SHPO. Then conceptual approval.
Thanks, Steven. Does the applicant and team have anything they'd like to respond or clarify? Staff comments? We will now move into board discussion.
Question on clarification for David, I guess. So the point that, and I know we're not here to really interpret or criticize the PUD, but it says masonry wall. And then in the language that you showed, the point is for, it says masonry wall or other fence type screening. And so I assume the intention was something to screen. But now they're proposing a pretty transparent, open aluminum fence.
That's a good point. I didn't think about the purpose the wall would be serving as opposed to a fence. But it is very vegetated. I don't know.
Yeah.
Plus, the applicants are required to do all this original planting.
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
don't, I'm just thinking, and again, I haven't been in all the conversations, I haven't read the PUD, but what is the point of even having, if the fence isn't serving the screening, it's, I don't know, if we're having a fence with breaks in it.
It's not, yeah, it's not security or screening. I agree. I think it needs to go back to city staff on that, or if the change from masonry to aluminum or whatever material it is. I think
Well,
city
because
staff and then the
aluminum
applicant team.
Fence
go
and
to-
masonry wall serve very different purposes.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
I mean, this seems like a fairly minor point in the PUD, as long as SHPO and Fenwick's owner is okay with it.
Yeah. I think the location and the type.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I just don't know that that's something that we should decide
Agreed.
as a board, because I think that it doesn't match what is shown in the PUD, and I don't think we're authorized to make
Agreed.
changes. to
yeah,
the
I
PUD.
mean, we're enforcing zoning, not
Yeah,
interpreting
agreed.
zoning.
Yeah.
So I would agree with that, is that whole situation.
Needs to
probably
go back to
be
city, SHPO.
Cleared up, and they need, and David and it needs to tell us how this
Is resolved.
is resolved, not us saying, we think this is better or not. I mean, we can, but that's not really,
But I mean, I feel like it was very clearly written that they wanted a masonry wall there by whomever wrote that for whatever reason, and this is what we're approving is completely different, and I just don't feel like it fulfills it without having specific language that they're okay changing the requirements of the PUD.
Agreed.
Now, it does say or other wall or fence type screening element.
But it's,
Approved by City of Charleston, SHPO, and I think
Other
the.
reg-
and I would argue that this fence is not a screening element. A fence type screening element would be like a wooden or a more solid, like
Yeah.
this is not a fence
a
type screening element.
privacy fence.
Yeah, this is
Again, yeah, I think we let it go back to applicant and city staff to figure out how to navigate it, but agreed that it's not up to us to make that decision. And
Well,
that should be
and then one-
referred to city.
Agreed. One thing that the applicants were proposing, which this PUD does not, is the path on the outside of the wall. They just say it should be someplace.
And again, I think that's starting to create all sorts of other questions that we're not ready to interpret. Is it that wall is clearly intended to buffer the historic property? Now you're creating an active use on the other side of that screen.
Right.
That I can't say goes against the language, but I would say probably goes against the intent
Mhm.
of that buffering type, and I'm not real comfortable with that.
Yeah, I think we leave it all at that. Let's have applicant, city staff, SHPO, whoever they need to get involved and figure out how to navigate it, because it's beyond what we should be talking about.
And can we flip to the rendered site plan. Right. I think that. I don't know, I might make the case that there are other places where you could have a multi-use path site plan. That wouldn't be so controversial.
Well, I mean,
I-
also if just all this were pulled down into the site. I don't know if that's possible because of the trees.
I think again,
Go ahead.
yeah, go ahead. Is it, let's see how the fence conversation shakes out, because if the fence gets moved to the property line, I think it's a moot point. If the fence doesn't, and stays where it is, then we need to have a discussion on that.
Well, I would just encourage you to, because I will tell you from the deals we've done, that is one of the most economic amenities that you can give to your residents, and residents use those multi-use paths, and that's why I'm kind of a little concerned with it just kind of dead ending.
I agree with that's a whole, yeah.
It becomes that doesn't become a destination, it kind of becomes a hazard in some, especially back in the woods the way it is. Yeah, it's nice to have places to stop but unless people are continuously coming by it, kind of invites.
And I think particularly if it's plantation mix.
Yeah.
It could go within some of the protected tree zones and it could wind through the maybe not even in the wetlands, but there seems to be from the wetland delineation on the other page. Spaces where it could extend, and even if instead of a cul-de-sac, you did more of a loop that had larger trees in the middle, it would be more successful than just having a
I mean, you could
plot
do,
down at the end.
even when you're going across root zones, you could do a small boardwalk.
Yeah.
And not impact root zones, and hand dig them, whatever, that's what we've done in the past. So I have a lot of concerns about that trail, even if everything was kosher about it, where it is, I have a lot of concerns with the design. I just feel like the site in general is very rigid. And that may be part of the program, but it just looking at it, even from a landscape, from a concept. Yeah, everything's in rows, bed lines are straight, grassed areas are grassed areas, and there's, you could even just use the land, leave the buildings where they are and use the landscape to kind of create some variety in the site. And I think there's a lot of sod here. Especially with thinking about these ponds being sod too.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of study to the landscape. And I think that even with, I like David's suggestions about some of the species to bring in, I think there's some study in some of these species that are being suggested that you probably save some money for things that are more native and more economical. I just think there's a lot of study to be done in the landscape, and
I think the context would lend itself to a more kind of looser. Like I just want to kind of shake it up because it's so almost formal, and they're taking the shape of like a formal city block with the sidewalks and the square planting beds. That doesn't seem to be the most appropriate for this site, particularly when you have these huge expanses of sod.
Yeah. And personally, I'm not getting the building trees. I think the trust designers will probably go crazy looking at that, but that's neither here nor there. I'm not getting it.
Architecturally, first of all, as we have said time and time again, this board is so in favor of trying to push as quickly as we can the affordable housing projects that come before us. And it does create certain conflicts when we're trying to look and help fulfill our responsibilities as it is to the community as a whole from from the appearance, aesthetics, context, et cetera. I've got a variety of, I tell you what, Dave, go to A14, that's a good one for me. There you go. We've seen long buildings. This is not a long building from an architectural standpoint. And as a result, I think that there are elements that really are working very nicely. The dilemma that I'm finding is that they're conflicting with each other in terms of their presentation. You have a very symmetrical element that's going to be adjacent to an element that is suggesting some asymmetry, but the asymmetry is carried out in a facadal manner. I think it would be easier and much more successful, considering the context that you're in, particularly with the other architecture around, that in spite of the playfulness of the asymmetrical roof, you maintain the symmetry of a roof line that will form the gable. I think you minimize, my recommendation would be to eliminate the vertical divisions and stick with a size of a siding that the architect feels appropriate. That being whether I think the smaller size is possibly a little bit more contextual. It certainly felt better, but whatever ultimate size is picked as far as the symmetry, don't keep changing. The board and batten on the little projections works nicely. The siding would work very nicely if it were consistent. The minimizing or elimination of the vertical divisions, I think, work well. The other issue that I know, having lived here and knowing what humidity and moisture and all the issues are associated with when you get into exterior corridors, particularly those that are enclosed, is that if you're not going to introduce new ventilation within the context of the space, then you've got to really open up those spaces. So I would probably recommend that in lieu of coming in even with the emulation of the form of the windows, and even at the end, if you could go to the prior drawing for a moment, David, as well. Even at the end of the corridors, maybe it's not on this one. What's got to be? Oh, here. Even at the end of the corridors, if it were just opened, just with railing, I mean, you've already got a rather significant recess there with a 3-story open space. Open it up as much as you possibly can to allow as much ventilation to come in. And I think that by opening it, it's going to do what staff has recommended and thereby breaking the volumes so that it's a little bit more consistent, possibly a little bit more readable in terms of what it's going to be providing.
Those long corridors in those buildings get
They're
really
long
dark.
Yeah.
I mean, you can put some lighting in them, but they lose natural light, and you feel like you're in a mine shaft sometimes. Sorry to interrupt, but just.
Yeah, the fencing around the mechanical units, I think, are very important as well. The other issue is, can you go to the clubhouse for a moment? And this is a question that I guess I had for go to the next drawing. Is there another one? One more? There's a rendering somewhere. Forget the rendering. The clubhouse. There we go. The space, the plenum. Yeah, ask the applicant a question. What is happening in that plenum space? Is it exposed structure in this clubhouse? What is going on up there?
So the breezeway that connects the two
Yeah,
halves of that clubhouse. Is that?
I'm talking about,
in
but,
this-
move over to your right, so left, right, there you go, what's going on up there?
That would be just the attic space.
Okay, so it's just plenum.
There would be, yeah, there would be. 10
So your
foot
ceiling height in that space is what would you say? to
10
be?
feet,
I'm sorry?
10 feet.
Okay. Thank you very much. There's a lot. There's a lot of cubics up there. And I understand that economy is also driving this, but it seems like these volumes can be restudied so that we don't get this type of a blank wall above, and possibly even reducing the slope of the roof would help out significantly. And I think the other thing that would help out on this building as it would on the apartments is, again, simplifying the elements so that you eliminate those vertical separations. You stick with a siding of the same size so that they all relate again to each other. This one is one, particularly on these end elevations. That elevation is the one that just caught my attention immediately, that worried me, but
I think these 3D renderings could show more context too. They're kind of very focused. I mean, I think that seeing the community, especially as the buildings relate to each other, and as we break up this rigidness, you know, whether it's with landscape or sidewalk design, but I think these pulling these images back, we've always been very focused on that, is seeing how the site relates to each other, not vignettes of individual buildings. I think that would really help too.
yeah, this is starting to feel, and I don't know if it was the intent or if it's just a misinterpretation on my part of the renderings, but it's appearing much more rustic than what I was imagining the balance of this development to be, particularly with the units that are across the way there that are already built. And I think a little bit more formality would be much more contextual as it begins to unify all of
Our
these structures.
architectural formality.
Architectural formality, yes. Although, I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean to be formal, don't get misunderstanding.
No, I understand what you're saying. It just, I don't know, it just seems like that, once again, you see the stuff in the background, but you don't see how things relate to each other and how the architecture relates, how the site relates. So I don't know that's benefiting, or without the context of a larger image, that's benefiting the project very well.
Can you go to A14 one more time? I don't want it to go unsaid. I think this is really starting to evolve very nicely, and if this were opened up, I mean, it would really bring down the scale that you were concerned with in minimizing the concern of the length, although again, I don't believe it's that long, but if those
Yeah.
corridors are open.
I do feel like that end of the building is starting to.
Thank you. I'm willing to make a motion. Even everything that I have said and recognizing the importance of moving these projects forward, I don't believe that there was nothing that I have indicated that no one on the board can't visualize. So I'm saying that by virtue of saying I could support a conceptual approval based upon a number of items to keep the project moving and to hopefully the responsibility really falls on the architect to make sure that they understand, and I would encourage the architect to really get with staff to be sure that there's clarity. So, David, we're putting more gray hair in your head, but make sure that there's clarity with respects to the architectural and horizontal and vertical directions. Do y'all?
I would agree and say the same goes for the landscape architect too, because I think there's a lot of things that need to be worked out before we see it again.
Okay.
I'm fine with that, as you know, with the understanding that this needs to be addressed when it comes back.
Okay. Well, in that case, I would move for conceptual approval with staff comments. You all help me here. 1, 3, 4, 5. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say with 4, should we, that's about the fence, you know.
Yeah, I say we leave out all the staff fence comments and have a
Yeah.
board comment.
Yeah.
So 1, 3, 6, 7, 8, and 9.
I would say with number 6, I think I would strike the first sentence of that.
Okay. Striking the first sentence of paragraph 6.
And I think 9 covers the fence,
Okay, so
that we don't need to address it in the board comments, actually.
okay, that sounds good. All right, board comments. Number 1. Omit vertical trim within plane of facades. That does, just for clarity, that does not include the corner boards, just within the facades. Eliminate the multiple widths of siding. Utilize.
Sorry. Okay, I got eliminate multiple widths of siding.
Define the width of the siding to be used throughout. Omit the asymmetrical gables. And use instead a symmetrical gable. And maintain the symmetry in the facade throughout. Regarding balconies, permanence of corridors and at stairwells. Open the corridors to the greatest extent possible. To allow ventilation and air circulation. Restudy clubhouse elevations. To minimize blank facade with no, I've got it right here. Thank you, Dave. With emphasis north and south elevations. And do we want, what was the decision regarding the fence?
We're good.
Okay, so the landscape.
We make a comment about. Cause it's kind of regardless of where the fence goes, but restudying the path terminus, because regardless of if it stays there or goes somewhere else, I think that the approach is not appropriate. It is,
You study,
You stay the layout and
the terminus,
terminus of
the multi-use path. And then, do you think, Andy, I'm curious your thoughts on if, or maybe I shouldn't ask this right now.
no, go ahead.
If you think 6 addresses enough what we're saying about the landscape.
I think I would add that the landscape needs to be reset. I mean, I struck the first part of that because I do think that there are some species that need to be rethought. I won't be picky right now, but I left rest because leaning towards natives and less ornamentals is
Mhm,
where we tend to go. But I do think that the formality
mhm.
of the landscape needs to be steady and the balance of planting versus turf. needs to be
Yes,
steady.
that's a good thing to point out.
So restudy landscape plan as it relates to a
The-
balance between planting and turf.
And the formality of the design, and that includes sidewalks, plant beds, everything that's within the landscape.
All right, so we have a motion for conceptual approval with staff comments 1, 3. 6 with the first sentence struck, 7, 8, and 9. Along with board comments, number 1, omit vertical trim within plain facades. This does not include the corner boards, is that right? Yeah. 2, eliminate multiple widths of siding and define widths of siding to be used throughout. 3, omit asymmetrical gables and use symmetrical gables instead, maintain symmetry in facades throughout. 4, regarding balconies, at terminus of corridors and stairwells, open corridors to the greatest extent possible to allow ventilation and air circulation. 5, restudy clubhouse elevations to minimize blank facades with an emphasis on the north and south elevations. 6, restudy path layout and terminus. And 7, restudy the landscape plan relating to the balance between planting and turf, along with the formality of the design. Good. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Andy. Any further discussion? Call roll, Ashley,
Yes, in favor.
Aaron,
Yes.
and I'm also yes in favor. Thank you. We will move on to the next item on the agenda, number 2, 3496, Shelby Ray Court requesting conceptual approval for a new addition to an existing animal hospital and veterinary clinic.
A couple context slides first. I could drop these countries to the screen. You can see the red thumbtack. This is where Shelby Ray Court is located. Closer view, it's just a little bit southeast of West Ashley Circle. Very closer view. And here you can see the existing building. This is an existing veterinary clinic, animal hospital. And the new addition is going to be just to the northwest of it. And closer view, existing building here, new addition will be right there. From Glen McConnell, looking into the site, you can see there's a pretty good existing buffer. You can barely see the building through here, the existing building, and then the new addition will be off. And then this is from Shelby Ray, looking south towards Glen McConnell. Here's the existing building in here. And you can see the curve in Shelby Ray right here. When we get to the site plan, I'll show you where the parking lot addition is going to be coming up close to this bend in Shelby Ray. Again, this is looking the other way, the bend in Shelby Ray. And we're proposing a new parking lot, which is going to be up right in here. I'll be talking about later. But I'll turn it over to the applicant.
Do my best. My name is Mark McCormick. I'm construction project manager, working directly for our National Veterinary Associates. I represent the Southeast. I also happen to just live here. So it's one of my projects. Unfortunately, our architect cannot be here. They do work for us all over the country and they're based in New Mexico, and our civil engineer is out of Philadelphia. He could not be here as well. I do have them on the phone. Waiting. They were very fascinated with the last project. So I'll do my best to answer some of your questions. I just want to go back and forth. I don't have really a presentation. We are an existing 16,000 square foot veterinary hospital, been in operation, I think 11, 12 years. I believe the building's a little over 20. I think it used to be a furniture store. We are 24/7 operation, so the existing is 16,000 square foot will be doubling in size to another 16,000 to be able to add more services that we don't already have.
Let me know when you'd like to advance slides.
Anytime you guys want to stop on a slide, I'll do my best to answer. But there's the addition there in the gray. Associated parking that's going to be needed. The left of there is Goodwill, to the right is Zaxby. Property, Glenn McConnell's on the bottom of the South Park. I think we have some renderings towards the end. It's probably what you'll need to go to, since we're this project is just an expansion.
So existing building,
Existing building, if it,
this is the top part is existing, the bottom part is the new addition.
Yeah, I was asking a question too. Go ahead, Enos.
I was just curious, and this is more curiosity than anything else. Can you go back to the overall floor plan, David, for a moment?
Oh, yeah.
There we go. So the bottom portion at that wall is that primarily for cats, feline? I was just wondering. Okay.
yes, we do have some hospitals that are quote exotics, but this is dogs and cats.
Okay.
Pretty much are.
And that bump out and to your left middle section where the wall, yes, that one right there. That is the beginning of the
See where
new.
I'm pointing? Sure. Can you see my?
Mark, see where he's pointing?
Oh, yes,
That's the beginning of the new construction.
correct.
Okay,
Wall right here.
okay.
So
The
the,
buildings, this is the existing building.
well, nothing will change with regards to the entrance. All doors, exterior doors are for emergency use only, essentially.
Correct. Correct. We have a few spaces where we have pet relief.
Sure.
You know, back in, but no, this will be the main clients, patients will come in here. We do have a secondary one here. But everybody's to come here, check in, and then they will be taken wherever they need to in the hospital.
Okay. Thank you.
Our elevations.
While he gets there, I have a also curious and completely selfish question. What will the additional services be that you get to add with this addition?
Typically, we can add more CTs for x-rays and diagnosing. We can expand our physical therapy after the dogs and cats have been worked on. Somewhere down the road, possibly a linear accelerator for cancer treatment.
You guys treated both of my animals, so I'll disclose that for any potential conflicts of interest, I've given y'all a lot of money. But you know,
I think it's working the other way.
I think I'm clear, but you did a wonderful job with cancer for one and kidney issues on the other, and I'm very grateful for this facility.
It's been
I hope you never have to come and use our services, because you're usually in distress with that.
Yeah. I unfortunately spent a Christmas Eve up here with a basset hound that was transitioning. So I'm very familiar with the facility also.
Actually, around this time last year, I had to take my pet to be put down. Put her here.
Yeah. So.
And we got the rendering.
Yeah, see the renderings, slightly different. Here, I'll start, northwest view, so here's the existing entrance where clients and patients would come. The addition starts right where that line is, perfect. Architects really love it. Here's the other one, so over here would be, Zaxby's, but over here, Goodwill for context, and Glenn McConnell's behind the building.
Questions? Related to architecture?
Boy, they threw you under the bus, didn't they, Mark? That's
What's there? I'm sorry.
I really don't have any questions. I have comments, but I can save those for the board.
Any questions? Is there anyone here from the public that would like to speak on this application? David, staff recommendations, please.
Thank you. I did have, sorry, I had one board question. I'm sorry, one applicant question as well. The trailer that's on the back side of the building, on the west side of the building, is that going to be moved at all? I noticed it's trailer on wheels. Is it typically pretty permanent once you get it in there? It's going to be sitting right here.
Yeah, there's a, yes, correct. So on the very opposite side, we will be upgrading the MRI trailer, putting a brand new one right here.
So my question was, will it be permanent once it's sitting there, or will it be?
Yes.
Okay.
Change them 5 to 10 years. Do as much as we can to upgrade the inside.
Let me show you on plan view.
Yeah, that's.
That's a good shot there where we're gone.
It'll be right here.
Currently, it's right here.
Is that? How is that screened, I guess, is the question.
Is that the rendering of the white fence in front of it?
No, that's the opposite side. They didn't show it in the rendering. Sit right here in the west elevation. That's what this canopy, the long canopy is for. People walking out to the trailer.
If you look in elevation though, let me go back to that.
The color one or the?
No, the one that you were just on, it had the elevation with the trailer and the canopy.
Sorry,
the bottom one.
it's low.
And this may be an ignorant question, but is there any reason why the MRI equipment can't be incorporated into the building and not in a separate trailer?
From our business case, the services we want to offer and the expense of changing them out. We do a lot of trailers. Got it. Where it's allowed.
Okay.
And so the canopy, the trailer doesn't go under the canopy, right? Am I reading that right? That this is the trailer and this is the canopy?
Yeah, I think the canopy looks, if you look at zoom in on sheet C400. It kind of shows like the site layout of it. And so there's a sidewalk that runs along the building with a canopy to go to the trailer.
I see. So the canopy is really for the sidewalk then.
Right. Yes.
But nothing happens between the canopy and the trailer. It just gets soaked.
Yeah.
That's
That's the way I'm reading it, at least.
the way I'm-
The staff, so,
the staff gets soaked.
no, we try to get it as close as possible.
I understand.
And some of the trailers will have some type of canopies as well.
Yeah, sorry, David.
Okay, staff comment number one. Staff recommends repeating the brick that exists at the north entry facade and adding it to the north new addition as well as the west and the south elevations. We recommend these new brick facades step up in height as the existing does, and as well as they bump out a little bit as well. Number two, staff recommends continuing the largest storefront window that exists on the north facade to the north facade of the new addition. So the first comment I made was referring to this existing brick entryway. We just feel that it could be repeated. The only two places they exist are on the existing building. And the new addition doesn't have any of this more ornamentation that we're suggesting. And my second comment about the largest storefront, this side is the existing storefront, and we were asking that it continue down the new addition as well. Staff comment number 3, study the west facade to be more appealing. Consider storefront windows on this side as well. And that's the side we were just talking about with the trailer side. For one more parking island, and trees should be added to the west side parking lot. And that's referring to right here. We're just thinking one more tree island. And the tree could be added here. Staff comment number 5, at preliminary review, please provide one elevation showing the trailer with the building. Staff comment number 6, all on-site traffic signs must have a square or round decorative post painted black, no U-channel posts. Number 7, DRB has a policy not to allow yellow bollards. They must be painted black or be decorative. You may have a yellow reflective band at the top of the bollard. Number 8, referring to the proposed parking lot addition closest to Shelby Ray, staff recommends studying the configuration of the parking lot to be parallel. I did this sketch right here. This is what they're proposing, but it comes very close to Shelby Ray. And I was just wondering, given the existing trees and so forth, can the parking lot be oriented this way instead, just to be further away from Shelby? If they cannot orient it the way I'm suggesting, staff is recommending to remove these last 2 parking spaces to allow for more green space and a low wall. Whichever parking lot comes to the final, we do suggest a one screen wall along that side of the parking lot. Number 10, define the material for the 6-foot high privacy fence, make sure it blends in with the landscape, such as earth tones. Number 11, it appears quite a few existing trees closest to Shelby Ray are being removed to accommodate the 2 proposed retention ponds. Let me go back to that. So here's the existing trees to be removed. And you can see the 2 detention ponds are in this area. It seems like some of these could be saved. For example, this cluster right here looks like if you just reconfigured the contours to go around that, they could maybe remain on the edge of the pond, and possibly a retaining wall would help to save those trees. We just asked that be studied a little bit more. Number 12, provide a wider landscape bed, some landscape screening on the west side of the trailer. So here's the trailer down here. We're just asking for a landscape bed on this side of the trailer so that it can be screened with landscaping. It might require eliminating the 1 parking spot that's up right here to the west of the trailer. I added comment number 13 about the height, scale, and mass. The height is fine because they're matching what they're doing, but we did feel that the scale and the massing of this building is getting too large. And we were asked for them to study ways to break up the massing.
Again, that was comment number 13.
That was added. Number 13.
Study ways to break up the math.
I hope you want to. I didn't say preliminary approval. We do recommend conceptual approval.
Thanks, David. Do you have any things you want to respond to or clarify from staff comments?
I'd like to open it up to my consultants if you don't mind.
Not at all. If you could state their names for the record if they do wish to speak.
We have Dave Madden of ESA Architects and Andrew Roth of Independence or Civil Engineers. Can you guys hear me? You guys there? Oh, let's try that. You guys there? Any comments on what you heard so far? So no comments on what you've heard from staff recommendations? Okay. Yes, we can. Okay, no recommendations from civil engineering, no recommendations from architecture.
Okay, we're now,
This is Andrew with Independence.
Civil.
I just want to note that the basins are existing.
if the basins are existing, then why are additional trees being removed?
If the basins are existing, why are the trees being removed? My understanding is the ponds were part of the original plan when it was built in the twenties, early 2000s. We're bringing it back.
It looks like they may be partially existing and then being expanded, is what I can tell, at least if you're looking at the existing and proposed contours on,
Here,
yeah.
expand, and then here, oops, and those two areas, it looks like it's being regraded and
Yeah.
trees removed there and there.
Actually, I think we can see that in the big view image I included, you know, one of them. Yeah, here it is right here.
Yeah. There are depressions out there, they may be just trying to reclaim the original.
Yeah.
Horse.
Stormwater ordinances probably changed significantly in the last 20 years.
Just a little bit. Okay.
Okay, let's move into board discussion.
Are those gonna be wet ponds, or are they just gonna be depressions?
You know, it doesn't hold water.
Wet, are they gonna hold retention or detention? Which one is the pond's gonna be? Detention.
I mean, in regard to the trees, if they're. Trees may not be necessarily worth. Retaining, you know, I mean, we always err on the side of wanting to keep existing trees, but they also could be.
Yeah, it would be good just to have some information on it, agreed. And I think there's a cluster of pines, and that to me, you know, but there's a couple of live oaks closer to Shelby Ray.
Yeah, I'm not
That
worried
is a
about
study.
pines, just the health on those oaks, trying to get to know.
And just some clarification about
Yeah,
what's
What's going-
existing, what's being expanded.
Yeah,
all.
and is it gonna go from dry to wet or what's, yeah,
Yeah.
agreed.
and you know, having them here would be good
Helpful.
to.
Yeah.
To be able to discuss this with.
We'll have consultants for the next one.
And not that you haven't done a great job.
Yeah, it's just kind of hard to. To interrogate people over the phone. Would you expect any less from me? In regard to that tree island. I have a feeling that they left that open so they could pull the trailer out through there.
Agreed. I think maybe you could, yeah, agreed.
I would actually prefer to see more buffering of the trailer in place. In lieu of that extra tree island, just knowing the functionality of that area.
You mean like on the Glen McConnell side?
I just. On the side where they were talking about taking the the space out to provide some more planting, and then even on the Glen McConnell side, because you can see kind of down through there, it's not as opaque as, especially with all the road work going on, you can see the back of that building pretty well.
We did a lot of truck routing to try to get it in there, and that's why this hashed area,
Yeah,
they'll have to come in and get back.
so that's what I'm saying, is I think I'd rather,
Could be a little problematic, but we'll
Right.
work with you.
In board discussion, so unless we ask a question, sorry.
I think that, like I said, I think we'd rather see some screening on it in place, and we'll understand the routing of getting in and out of there.
Yeah.
Then I guess in general, from the landscape plan, I think that it could be significantly studied from the point of view of species, and
I was, yeah,
I think it needs a lot of work, just in general.
I would say that this, make sure that the species selected are contextual to the low country. It seems like a lot of them are from a different planting zone that won't thrive here, with our humidity and heat. So I would say study the palette to make sure it's appropriate plants for the low country.
And you may want to talk to somebody local.
They do have a local
Mm.
on Meeting Street.
That's good.
Well, and then looking at this, it looks like we have turf spec for that on Lane West. I would, as we discussed with the last applicant, I would study that not to be turf to the extent possible.
I'm sorry, you're referring to our Beverly?
Well, the pond.
Oh,
Up a little bit here. This appears to be turf.
Evergreen Design Group, 170 Meeting Street.
Well, notwithstanding, so it's still,
Yeah, it's worth reiterating what Andy was saying, that if the design professionals were here, it would be it would probably go, communication would be much easier. But I didn't mean to stop you.
no, I'm
Right.
I'm not. I don't know that it was anything to necessarily hold it up by itself, but I'm still find the landscape plan very problematic.
I agree.
What did y'all think about the brick comment for the facade, knowing that that's not gonna be another guest entrance to the building?
Say that one more time, I'm sorry.
There was a staff comment about adding brick to the.
Solid.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would offer that it, just from my opinion, is probably premature. There's volumetrically, this area screams for really good design, and whereas I understand that there's an existing building that does lend itself to a certain amount of architectural language, it isn't a strong language. And 16,000?
It'll be double to 32,000.
Yeah, 32,000 square foot building. I wouldn't go wild here, but I do believe that there's more that can be done with the addition, even to the extent of possible invitation. And let me say this too, that, having done, and I know we both know, having done a lot of medical facilities function really to the greatest extent dictates how the evolution of the floor plan. The problem that I'm struggling with is the translation of that floor plan vertically, and what's happening. It's a very significant addition in this area of smaller contextual buildings, and it really just seems to need more attention to just a volumetric study, possibly indentations within the space. I think the staff recommended scale of fenestration in all regard. There's a lot of height in this respect. I think of, is there a building section? I don't think I saw a building section. That, or am I wrong there?
I don't believe there is one.
The other thing that was very difficult in just studying it, it took a great deal to understand exactly what was existing, what wasn't existing. It would be nice on the renderings if that was noted. But anyway, you finally work your way through that. It's not ready, I think, to move forward personally to the next step. And whereas it just needs a great deal more attention, again, with regards to the volumetric analysis that you're doing here. And potentially breaking the facade where the new comes to the old, redefining instead of trying to mimic the existing primary entry, reanalyze that in a better fashion so that whereas cats are important, we may be able to express that entry point and entry portal in a different way. And then there's a lot of cubics above. What is the ceiling height in the space? Are we just matching the eave of the building next door? So what is happening above that? You have a 9 or 10 foot ceiling height inside?
10 foot.
10 foot, and then you have what, about 4 or 5 feet for plenum?
At least.
And then parapet above that? And that parapet is, it would really be helpful to be able to see a section in what we're dealing with. I don't think that you necessarily have to mimic the existing structure. I think that certainly from a material standpoint, that does provide a read to you, but beyond that, I think that there are a variety of other issues that you could possibly start to look at as you begin to understand this building. Let me ask you something, David, on the little, can you blow into this bottom elevation for a moment? There we go. Are those lights that are, or are those the outlets?
These are lights.
They're lights, okay.
Backlights.
So your scupper, your outlets, roof drain outlets are up above. I'm assuming those are internal drains that you have, and those are emergency scuppers?
Correct.
Okay, so they're just going to drip down the wall. This isn't precast, is it?
Original's precast.
And what is the new?
New will be structural steel, no studs, and EFA system.
Okay, oh, it's an EVA system. So that gives you a lot of opportunity to kind of play with it. I know that you have exam rooms all along the front elevation, and I know staff was suggesting the possibility of increasing the fenestration to a larger fenestration that matches the other side, which I realize is predominantly lobby space, but maybe bringing the windows closer together, almost to the extent that they align themselves with the wall, divisible wall of the exam space, so that it does begin to give you the illusion of larger, and possibly the space below that might be suggested a different material. Maybe this gives you the opportunity of introducing something like a warmer material, maybe a footing.
I think there's a lot of study
Yeah,
architecturally.
it just needs a lot of study, Mark.
David, does the board still have a policy about EFS?
Not so much.
Okay,
been
the board
allowing
did
it.
at one point.
Yeah,
Ready for a recommendation? Or motion?
You want to take a shot? You want me to your?
I think that, you know, from the point of view that there's a lot of architectural components to it. I think, you know, from the landscape side, it's mostly, I think it's a significant restudy on the landscape side. You know, engineering, I mean, engineering is kind of, it is what it
It
is.
is, yeah.
I don't know, is this? If, okay, just amongst us, if the board, we wanted to be different. So this isn't, is it a deferral or is this a denial of the addition with a restudy? And I know that this complicates it because it's an addition to an existing building.
Yeah, I would think being that it's an addition to an existing building, it's a deferral.
It's a
That's
deferral.
my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I would go with the deferral. I mean, it is on the edge. I mean, in my mind, I think the fact that it is an addition to a building that you're trying to work with what's there.
I mean, the site plan's pretty much set, the building footprint's pretty much set. It's now working, you know.
It's architectural, it's administration, it's how you treat, how you overcome what you have, basically. And I just don't think they've gotten there.
So I would move for deferral with a restudy of the,
You want staff comments?
I'm just thinking out loud right now.
I know.
Were you gonna make the motion?
No,
Or is
I'm
anybody else
fine with you
prefer?
making the motion.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I would move for deferral with staff conference, staff comments 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13.
Dennis, can we omit number 4?
Omit.
That's in relation
Sure.
to that, trailer
Comment 4. Okay, so
5.
staff comment 5 through 13. And I think that 13 staff comments really addresses the restudy of massing.
Yes.
So there's no real reason to go forward with that. I mean, I would. Board comment would be to restudy the landscape.
Maybe
With more low country.
emphasis on the plant palette, I think.
Palette,
That's my biggest concern.
palette and form in some
Or palette and what?
form, just how it relates to the site.
Anything else?
I mean, I think that, you know, between our discussion and what is said in the. I mean, 13 really hits
Yeah,
where
I
the
think
biggest
that's the
problems are.
emphasis on the deferral. So we have a motion for deferral with staff comments 5 through 13 with a strong emphasis on number 13. Board comment number 1, which is to restudy the landscape plan with an emphasis on the palette and form. Thank you, Andy. Any further discussion?
I'll just add a little bit more commentary that deferrals are typically pretty hard to get a yay vote out of me on. And I think this one's on the fence for me, but I think there's just a lot, you know, as a lay person and not a design professional, when I'm looking at the front of the building, there's a good amount that we still need to work through, and then hearing what the landscape architect's comments are tonight, that that will lend itself to my vote.
I will now call a roll. Ashley?
Yes.
Erin?
Yes.
I'm also yes in favor. Thank you very much. Last item on the agenda is review of minutes from the October 16th, 2023 meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion.
Thank you. Second,
Second,
If
any
I
discussion?
we accuse or don't vote, do we have enough since I wasn't here for that meeting?
I wasn't here either, so.
No.
so what do we do?
I don't think it's really ever stopped.
Yeah, I know. We voted in the past, so.
Maybe take my vote last.
Aaron,
Yes.
Ashley,
Yes.
and I'm also in favor.
I think that was a little bit of a,
Don't make us vote on it, you gotta next.
Okay, are we off?
Almost.
Is this a civics class gets me